my screen on your screens? That's working. Good. Right, we're going to create a new project. So we're going to create a new project.
After we've got screen viewer open, then what do we do?
Sorry?
If you have screen viewer open, then what do we do?
Then what you're going to do is create a new project.
Oh, in Visual Studio.
Visual Studio.
ASP.NET.
No, it's not. Have I got that highlighted? No, sorry. I'm just waiting for the. Right, what you want is Windows Forms app.NET Framework, Visual C#, the one that's highlighted, and I'm going to call this Squares, and then call it OK. So it's nice, simple. Now, hopefully, I should now have a whiteboard where the mouse allows me to actually click. That's completely out of sync, but it clicks. Wow! Power of modern technology.
Wow.
I know, technology is great. I love technology. I love the sound it makes when it goes wrong. Go boom! Right.
That.
Right. Are we all there? Yeah? We've all got a version of Visual Studio open. We've called it Squares. We've created
The name of the project is Squares.
The name of the project is simply Squares.
Squares with capital S.
Can be, yeah. Both at the start and the end if you like. I don't mind. How do you want to call that?
Squares.
Squares. It's not the only game we're going to be creating today, by the way.
We do what Simon says.
So Simon says.
Yeah. Have you seen the new version of the goggles?
No.
It was on Judging Show. You've got to, I think, you weirdly place your hands on the viewer. And the old chap, the big John.
Yeah.
He just did it. Everyone else is struggling to do it.
He's actually an expert in
Windows Forms, right?
Simon. So
Windows Forms.
it's Windows Forms application, .NET Framework, C#. It's called Squares. And all we're literally going to do, when you've got it open, go to all Windows Forms, you find something called a panel and you drag it on. We're not even going to change the size of it at the moment. And I'm going to call this one PN Square. So under name on the properties, PN Square. And the back colour I'm going to make black. A panel.
From the toolbox.
From the toolbox, a panel. Why do you guys like the dark colouring for?
Because it's easy to see. It's easy to see.
It's easy to see when you've got the lights off and you're in the darkened basement rocking backwards and forwards. Then I'm going to drag a second panel on it. I'm going to call this one PN Red. And I'm going to set its back colour to red. PN Square and PN Red.
PN Square and PN Red.
Yeah, PN Square, PN Red. And then amazingly, the only other component we need for this game, because it's such a complicated game, well actually there's two more components, I should put a score on there as well somewhere. We're going to put a label, so we're going to drag a label into the top corner, and I'm going to call that LB score. I'm going to change its font to be a bit bigger. You can see it's got font settings. I always use Calibri or Calibri because Calibri is a nice font. I'm going to make it about 16 and I'm going to set its text to 0. So LB score, although it's still coming up as label 1 at the moment.
Yeah.
PN square, and the score is LB score. LB for label, PN for panels. The final item we need is something called a timer. When you drag a timer onto a form, it appears at the bottom of the screen.
What you had before them?
The LB score label.
Do we call timer something specific?
I'm just going to leave it as timer 1 because I'm really lazy when it comes to timers. I have this tendency to name everything on my forms apart from timers. I don't know why. It's just a laziness that I've got. We do need a timer, so you need to find timer and drag that down to the bottom. So, given what I've discussed so far, what is the specification for my game? Let's write a specification. So for my specification, I'm going to use a really, really technical program known as PowerPoint.
Oh, yeah.
You may have come across this program. It's used by professionals to not make the sorts of things that I use it for. I'm going to change the layout to a title and content. You don't have to copy, you don't need to do this, but we're going to write it together. So, what is the specification that I need to put onto my spec for this program?
It's the C# application form.
Okay, C# application called squares. At random, square will appear on the screen. The user has to click the square. If the square is black, they score a point. If the square is red and they click it, it is game over.
Can you put this on the in the my notes section?
Maybe. Don't know. Might feel like it. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Obviously, no, please.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, is that? Do you think that's a good specification? Does that make sense? It's not specific enough in the slightest. You're right. Absolutely right. Let's make it a bit more specific. Right. So let's get rid of this one and say a random. Whoa. Capitals. Random number generator is set up as the program starts. No, not yet. Not yet. No, that's fine. That is that's specific enough. The screen is blank to start.
I've been thinking about the specification stuff we did earlier on in the year where it wasn't super.
Oh yeah. We will be getting that way. After a time period that is random between 0.5 seconds and 2 seconds, a square appears on the screen. This square could be red or black, randomly selected with a probability of, should we say, 5 out of 6 black, 1 out of 6 red. Yes, we'll do it like as if it's a dice roll of red. The user has 1 second to click on this square before it disappears again. if the square is black and they click it in time, they score a point. If the square is red and they click it, it is game over. If the square is black and they don't click it in time, it is game over. That sound about? That's a bit more specific now as a specification. And that's pretty much as specific as we need to be for this particular game because it's not going to be the most complicated game. So we've got a specification. How do we turn that into a piece of software? Well, let's do it the backwards way first of all, which is the way most programmers would do it in the real world. They'd just go ahead and actually make it and then get it working and then try and work out a design based on what they've got working. Okay, we call it the trial and error method or the wrong way of doing things. So how do we make it work? Well, I'm going to right click view code and that will then bring up my code screen for my program. My program's all nice and empty at the moment. Sorry? Yeah, right click on the form anywhere and it will just then click view code and it will come up with this. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a global variable, random number generator. Random rnd equals new random system.datetime .now.millisecond. Can anyone remember what a random number generator does? Generates random numbers. And what's the reason for what I've got listed there about getting the current millisecond that the program started running on?
What?
If you look there, I'm creating a new random number generator and I'm giving it a value that is the millisecond that comes up on the clock at the moment where I actually run the program. So as soon as I run it, it grabs how many that millisecond component at the time. Why am I doing that? Yeah, so pretty much the random number generator seed, as it's called, changes every time. Computers cannot do true random numbers. They're a sequence of random numbers in a mathematical formula. So if I set the start point, it will be completely different every time I play it. However, there's only 999 different milliseconds, or 1,000 different milliseconds that can be chosen from. So actually, every time I run it, it's going to be one of 1,000 different game styles. I just don't know which one of those 1,000 it is. As a human being, I can't register the pattern being similar unless the same one happens to twice in a row. If I wanted to make it even more random, I could multiply that by the number of minutes, divide it by the number of hours, times it by the number of days, all sorts of things to make sure the number is actually eventually completely random. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hide. So when I initialize my form, hide the two squares. Pn red.visible equals false. Pn square.visible equals false. So when you run your program now, you're going to have the most amazing game ever. Because that's it. That's all the code we need to do, isn't it? No, probably not. If I run the program, just so you guys can see it, you should end up with the most amazing blank form ever. Oh, of course, we have to then change the access is denied. So we have to go into the squares property. No, not squares properties, sorry. Configure. Oh, where is it? That's project properties, isn't it? It's that. No. What am I on? Project. I can't remember where I'm supposed to go.
Debug options.
It's debug options. Thank you. And then go all the way down to use manage compatibility mode because college can't get the security right. And yay! Look, we get a form with just a 0 in the top corner. That's going to be the score. Years of experience. Right, what have you got so far?
I went to system update.
No, that's actually mine. That's yours.
Yeah.
Right, system.date time dot now millisecond. Just hit enter every time it fills it in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
pn red.visible.
So you've got the label.
I thought we'd been doing. I've not been doing terribly. So everything's filling out like to switch back and forth on the screen. But it's incredibly difficult. Screen. I was going to say, Richard usually does that, and that and screenshot, and I usually use the screenshot feature periodically, which we will probably be using. I have my time. Did you say you also want to talk to the
I just checked. Has everyone got a blank form that comes up with just the score? Yeah?
Yep.
Very hard this. So where is the logic on actually making all this happen, making it all the random thing appear? Well, this is to do with the timer control. So what I'm going to do now is set the timer to fire at a random interval between 500 and 2000 milliseconds. So timer 1 dot interval equals RND next, and we want a number between 500 and 2000. And timer 1 dot enabled equals true. So that will set the intervals to be random between 500 milliseconds and 2 seconds, and then enable it to be true. Take that message back.
Yes, boundary into reference.
Thank you. What's your number there? That's password in there, so you get this set up while you're set up in there first of all.
Sorry.
I'll get that set up.
So set it as
I called it time.
yeah. It's the only thing right there. There. Sorry, I just pulled it.
Once you, I'll get it sorted on yours as well. Okay, next thing we're going to do is go back to our imaged form, our Form 1 design. Click on where it says Timer 1 at the bottom there. Click on the little lightning bolt for the properties and double click on ticks. That sets up a connection to what happens when the Timer 1 ticks.
Whoa, what are we doing?
So I'll help you, Jacob, in a second. Just set up screen view on your other screen.
Oh, on the other one.
So this is what's going to happen when the timer interval actually triggers. Okay? Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So all I'm going to do at the moment is say pn square dot visible equals true. So what we should now have when we run our program is after so long, a square appears. Wow, it's exciting. And it will be different every single time we run that program. Then on here, we're going to go to design. Click on the. Oh, done it anyway. Do it by clicking the enter with your phone. There you go.
I didn't mean to do that.
I didn't do that.
Maybe I have a one this
No, I
one.
swear it's in the same position. Yeah, I don't think it's moving.
It's not.
You swear it's in the same position?
Yeah, it is in the same position.
That's because we're not told it to move anywhere yet.
I thought it was the hand.
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know. Am I going to move seats? If that one can't run stuff, I'm not going to go to the thing.
Right, okay, what I'll just do now, squared up is equal to trig. If you watch, the square will randomly appear after so many seconds. Okay? So, how do we set it to change location randomly when it appears?
Keep it random coordinates.
Yeah. So how do we do that? Well, we can say pn square dot left equals rnd next, and a value between 0 and this dot width is the width of the form. And we can do the same thing for top, but we use height. Now what will be really interesting is that you'll see the box not only appear, but it will actually move, and it will be constantly moving. Which is weird, because why is it doing that when we haven't told it to just constantly move?
Oh, it's not like you can stay in the position either.
This is fun. Figuring this one's.
Yeah, there's some CSS in that one. Like I say, square dot left. That's it. Okay.
That's kind of what I was trying to do.
I can make some bad. Oh, I'm taking the chairs. You can choose one of these ones. Can you even be on the roof?
Yeah. Yeah, man, view there is a great
I don't know which one. This side, that side.
Oh, yeah.
See? Lots of moves.
Stay within the width of
There we go. Still buying the chocolates.
Okay, so here's problem number 1.
Yeah.
That some of you may have already noticed. Problem number 1 is that the
Forget chocolate, man.
guys. Problem number 1, you can see that the box appears going off the screen. So how do we fix that problem first of all?
Yeah, so
We need to set a boundary like we used to with Pong. We actually just say minus pn square dot width, and do the same thing with minus pn square dot top height. And it will slightly go off at the bottom because of the border, but we're going to get rid of the border soon, so that won't matter. And you'll see now, just by that slight change, as I say, it will be a slight thing off the edge. It also means that if I change the size of my form, it will always match the size of the form it's currently on.
it's going a lot faster.
That's just a random number generator, how many milliseconds it's firing. Yeah. Okay. So, nice and simple so far. Now we actually need to be able to click on the box, and when we click on the box, increase our score by 1.
Which one of these is right? You've written the minus thing.
Yeah, I've added that now. That's as it should be now.
Really?
Yeah. That's if you put that on both of yours now, that should be right. So what I've done is I've boundaried by taking the entire square box size. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is the initially written differently?
Yeah, no, I'm building it up as I go. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, on the picture of the form on the square, I'm going to click it once and then find where it says click on the properties. If you look at the bottom of my window and double click.
Black one.
The square, yeah, the black one. Okay.
Double click it.
Then find on the lightning bolt, click, double click on click, and you'll find it says PN square click. Now, this is where we're going to increment our score if we manage to click on the box. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
So, we need another global variable. So at the top, I'm going to do int score equals 0. And every time I click on the square, score plus plus. Okay. So building it up, what does this mean now? It means that when I run my program, which I will just move out the way so you guys can still see the code, pretty much. Let me just get rid of all the boxes so you can see the code. I can now spam the box, but my score's not going up. I haven't assigned it to the label. So what I need to do then is then say lbscore.text equals score to string. I run that now, and again, if I now, I can spam the box because there's no errors or anything like that that's going to stop me from doing that at the moment.
No, we don't want LB score.
Sorry?
No.
So at the moment, I'm getting to the point already that I've got a working system that I can at least click a score, and as I say, if I spam the box, I can score, score very, very quickly. How do we now make this into more of a game? Now, this is where we start looking into specification. Sorry?
Do we have to limit sort of the amount of time you click on it, so you only get 1.2?
Yeah, so what we need to do is almost, as soon as we click on it, we need to make it disappear.
You can match it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, you can mash it, so that's the first thing we're going to stop from happening. How do we do that? Well, we actually say pn square dot visible equals false. So as soon as you click on that square, it disappears again. Now you can't mash. Till the timer kicks in again, that's right. We also want to change the timer interval. So there's actually a random, when you first start the game, obviously it's randomly how quickly it appears. We actually want that randomization to happen every time the box has reappeared and hidden, don't we? Yeah, does that not make sense?
Yeah. I missed you between the score variable.
Right at the top, underneath random RND, is int score equals 0. I've got it highlighted on my screen at the moment. Yeah, no worries. So what I'm going to actually do there is I'm going to...
Where it's not showing on the video.
Hello.
Oh,
You can't come on this computer, unfortunately. The computer's decided to not work. You can't run any programs. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swap this machine over. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, you can do that, can't you? Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes forget who's in the classroom. You know, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I don't remember to
Yeah.
anxiety get
Yeah, I do. I'm gonna.
number sequence goes out.
I know. I'm gonna let them know as well that one's not working correctly.
I've not quite got the two string bit right. The LD4 two string. Oh.
Massive box, small.
But now obviously we want to make the square thing go into it. So after you put it once, the square goes off. So you can only it once, yeah? And then we're going to, our random number time interval, add in to our time tick. So every time it clicks, it'll be different how quickly it comes up next. So then it's going to be really fast, really slow. Yep, does that make sense? So has everyone got that so far? The random number generator changes the interval every time it goes through the tick, and the square visibility goes off when you click it. Yeah? Is everyone okay so far?
Yeah. Sorry, I was distracted by the program.
So the next thing we need to do is we need to randomize whether we show the black square or the red square. Yeah? So how do we do that? Well, in the timer one tick, we're going to say if rnd.next, and we're going to do a number between 1 and 7. Now the reason for this is it's inclusive on the bottom number, and it goes up to the final number. So that means it'll be a number either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And then we're going to say if it equals 6, we're going to do something. Otherwise, we're going to show our black square. So I'm going to put quotes around it. And this will be PN red. Oh yeah, you have to plug it into the graphics card
Yeah,
rather
the
than
graphics card.
yeah. And just to be sure, because the size of the squares may change over time, we're going to set the red width and height on the minuses there as well. So if we run that now, you'll see what the problem is straight away. You've got a black square, that's fine. Black square, black square, black square, black square, black square, black square, black square. Still black squares. Problem should lie when we get a red square, hopefully. There's the red square.
Oh, they're both not checking at the same time.
The problem is the red square doesn't disappear because we haven't got any code that says the black or the red square have to disappear yet. So we actually need to say at the top PN red dot visible. So the first thing that happens when the timer triggers is we turn off both the red square and the black square. Then we say if it's the red square, these triggers show that. If it's the black square, show that. And then we change our random number interval. Does that all make sense so far? Yeah?
No.
No, you weren't in the room. That's why. Not really. Okay, we'll break it down again. First of all, when the timer ticks, we're going to hide both of the squares. So if they're visible, either of them are visible, they'll just disappear off the screen. Then we say, let's roll a dice. If the dice number is 6, show the red one. Otherwise, we're going to show the black one. Then, finally, change how long it'll be before the timer fires again. This will mean we can only ever show one square at a time because both squares are turned off and then only one of them switch back on again.
Well, we still the red square won't disappear, will it?
Yeah. Why won't it disappear?
Will it disappear?
Yeah, that line there, when the timer fires again, it will disappear. Okay? So, Let's try it and see. There's a red square. Don't want to click on that one. Black square, black square, black square. At the moment, if I click on the red square, nothing happens. I just don't get a score because we haven't written the code that goes into the red square.
Yeah. Chris, can you?
Yeah.
Can you click
Okay. What you need to change is just the timer 1 tick, I believe.
Do I?
Uh,
I thought that everything else about the red square.
if you take a look at your timer 1 tick, that should be the only thing that needs changing.
Oh,
So
what
we
is it?
changed the PM square through true to false.
I've got a timer.
Well, at the top, it's visible.
No, the timer.
Oh,
Things like that, right?
No. You're in
Ah.
different code, yeah? Okay, so let's just start with PM square dot visible.
I don't know what I've got. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a random number generator.
So I'm just gonna
Next number is a 6. I'm going to show you that square.
I like you
Otherwise, we're going to change that square. Make sense? If the next number, if the random number generator finds a 6, we'll show you that square.
Yeah, no. What's
Well, hang on. Is it maybe yeah.
No. In a random number generator, this lower number is the first number it finds, and it goes up to that number. So if I do 1, 7, it means it could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Okay. So that actually means it can either be up to 500 to 1999. I should have actually put that as 2001 officially. And what we're going to do is after we've randomly shown 1 and 2 of them, we're then going to change how many it is before the next time it fires. Yeah, does that make sense? So what you should have now on yours is only 1 square ever appears, black or red. Click the red button. But eventually that will be getting over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have
You have to hide it to first. So PM square dot visible equals. Okay, so what it's going to do is hide the 2 squares first of all, and the random number generator to create like a red or black square.
Very good. Good. That's good. I got my success 3, 1. Which not? You said you wanted to
Yes, I will.
conflict. So I know you were. Yeah, we jumped one chapter.
So what you want to do is everything to my hands
Yeah.
on the timer. Then we'll change it again for next time. So every single time it moves on to the
CS3 is all done.
Trust me, safe.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember we okayed all of the stuff for 2, for task 2, and then the last bits of
I got
task
the game over
3
as well.
were
Oh, you don't have to go down
yeah, and one
Have you got it saved? That's very cool. Okay. Right, so have you got it working over there, Jay?
No, I don't know where we are now.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So first thing is, yeah, it's the same thing.
Whoa.
No,
So,
no,
you
no,
must
no,
have-
no, it's time rather than time one. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to these bolts. So each is the mouse. So that's the same structure. This is a European
Yeah, you went through.
is basically a six reverse thread. The reason it's 1
I've done one. Yes, I have.
You got it still, man.
Yeah, no,
Because it's stupid. I don't understand why it's not inclusive on both ways.
That was not convincing.
No.
That's- I think that's good.
Yeah. That's a good reason.
So we can get fine.
The timeline then changes the cancel between
I would imagine it will be because computers count zero.
It is the zero. Yes.
Drinks.
But
and then it should be good. Unless
We're waiting for the chapter. And not the second. Oh.
It's random, and 1 in 6 randomly will do that. So
Okay, so once we've got that, we're then going to move on to the whole game over system, okay? Which I know Sam's already beaten me to on his one. So there are several options where the game over will trigger, okay? First, if you click on the red, if you click on the background of the form without actually clicking on the black box, or if you miss the black box entirely and therefore don't get it in time. Okay. So what we're going to do first of all is create our own method called game over, and then we're going to reset the game. Okay, so private void game over. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the timer. Then message box dot show game over. You scored plus score to string. A message box comes up in the middle of the screen, and you have to hit OK to clear it. So when that then is the person clicks OK, it will then move on to the next line of code, which will be score equals 0, timer 1 dot enabled equals true. But I'm also going to hide the 2 squares.
oh, there you go.
So that is what our game over code will do. It will show a message say game over, you have scored. It will then reset the game and then start it off again. So I'll wait for you guys to write the game over code.
Huh?
I said it's scary sometimes. It looks like I actually know what I'm doing, doesn't it?
Oh, damn it.
Well, I think
And you're playing.
Chris,
Why do we set score dot x to 0?
Why do we set score dot text?
once it's game over, you set it.
Yeah, you reset it after. Right, so when that message box shows, okay, if the program will pause at that point, it will stop and wait for you to hit the OK button. Once you hit that OK button, we'll then reset it up for the next person to play. Basically. So the reason we're setting this, you couldn't score the text. The reason we don't do it there is otherwise it will still appear on the screen as the person scored until the last one is Okay. We haven't actually attached this game over code to anything yet. So where do we attach it to? Well, you may have already worked it all out. I'm about to make a change, so if you want to snapshot it as we go through. The first thing I want to do is on PN red on click. We obviously want game over to run. And I'm going to do the same thing on the backdrop of form 1 click. Okay. So in code terms, all I've had to do is just copy the game over bit. There is one other condition that we need to put into the code, which is if the person misses the black and doesn't click anything at all, it's also game over. And I'll do that with you in a few seconds once you've got this one working. Let me just double check this works. So I'll click there, game over, you scored 0. 1, 2. Click the red, that's game over as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, so that all seems to work so far.
That was all the bits to check. Yeah. Well,
So demo bits. So at the right bottom, underneath your private void, really select things. That's it.
no,
Yeah, form 1 load. I knew it was. I knew you were going to load. Right, it's form 1 click. So it's probably double click.
well, I don't want.
System.label.
So does the red.
Okay, so you're going to have these two ones. Private void.
So does the red here.
So it's better for it. It's now red mode as well.
Space.
Like paint when you draw it on the screen. And we're clicking. Scroll to click back on that. Come on, head. I know.
who's the security?
Game.
Because last time we scored, just based on that score.
John working okay?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. Okay,
There we go. Right, so the final bit is what happens. How do you work out if it's still appearing on the screen and you didn't hit it in time? Well, actually, it's really simple. If PN square is visible when the timer ticks, it must be a problem. It must have failed. So that line that says PN square visible equals false, I'm going to get rid of and change to if PN square visible equals true. So when the timer ticks, if the square is still true, game over. Simple as that. So if the square is still visible when the timer ticks, then you missed it. Game over.
Well, if I don't, I can get rid of it.
And that is how you make a really simple squares game. It's really fun to play on a whiteboard, which is one of the reasons why I like this game so much. The last thing I want to do now, though, is make sure that... Sorry?
I can imagine.
Yeah, we're about to play it in a minute on whiteboard, so you get the highest score. It's even more fun when this whiteboard goes out of sync so quickly, yeah. The last thing I want to do to make this a bit more of a fair game, if you like, is I'm going to have it so that the form is always full screen. Okay? And the way I'm going to do that, on my particular one, is on the properties of the form, I'm going to change the form border style to none, and start position to, not start position, Windows state to maximised. I'm also going to change the back colour to blue, but not nasty blue like that, a Dodger blue I like. Dodger blue is better. Actually, with the red, it doesn't really work too well, does it? Let's have it as a more of a gold. That's a bit bright, isn't it? Corn silk or goldenrod. Corn silk. That's right. That's not bad. Yeah. It's form border style none. Windows state maximised. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is orient my whiteboard. And we'll have the normal game. This is 10:22 of who can score the highest.
I'm at a disadvantage because I'm not able to reach.
Oh, I wasn't fast enough. I scored 2. Oh, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah, we did.
This is where you want
Who's
some.
the next?
This is where you want some Asian.
Chris, let's just.
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah.
We'll still run the thing. We just missed that
Oh, sorry,
the last bit of code.
Which was the code? The top there. Okay, all I changed was if PN squared visible equals
Sorry.
if the square is still
I don't miss the black square. Oh, nearly went for it.
Oh, you
Oh,
suck.
you saw that. You saw that.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. On the
Square. Shit. What was score?
It's just, you know, it's just as bad.
Look at it.
It's not that good, right?
Chris, I missed the last bit of 10 as well. Where you to visible.
This is going to be a YouTube game of game like the mouse speed
It's going over score 1, it's too quick. Yeah. Yeah, that's the bottom. Oh. That one was. You're too quick. Yeah, it's because it's on like a literally half a second timer. You missed that one. Oh, hold on.
I play a certain rhythm game on my iPod, so if like the hypothetical.
I should have probably told you before, I'm live streaming this, so all of you playing on this game is showing on the live stream, but I didn't think I'd tell you until after it starts playing it. So, it's slightly out of sync, but go on, give it a go, Patrick. The hardest thing though, really, is the fact that if it's the minimum 500 milliseconds, it's just too quick. That was literally, it just changed over before you tapped it.
Yes, man.
So this is then where you then start tweaking the game and say, well, maybe we've changed the times to be a bit different. Oh, 8. 8? No, it's 8. Come on, Patrick. I got 12, but I did try it 3-4 times before I got 12.
I got 16.
Cheating.
Sorry, I was aiming for.
You got 16? Yeah, you're using a mouse, not a unsynchronized whiteboard. You've got to go up there next. See what you get there on this one. Always doing well. Yeah, that's fine.
Don't you do
Double
it.
tapped it.
Time when you got start. It does. Time one does.
Just imagine that game doing. You can imagine that game on a big screen doing quick round.
What I do is move that into a second game.
Yeah.
As well.
It's just go like hot mental flash games. Oh, there's almost a jump there.
As someone who plays mobile rhythm games on a fairly regular basis, I should be really good at this. So theoretically.
Okay, then you need to obviously hold the load as well.
We've got like 20 now.
Fantastic. We then look and see about how to build the high score. So we can do all those sorts of things and start building it up.
Ah, nice.
Okay.
Please.
29. Yeah.
The PM
Challenge.
Yeah.
where you don't play.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's fine. How do I step overflow exception? Oh, you're calling itself. Sorry, you put it in the game overflow.
I can't play.
It's calling itself. I don't know again to an upload screen.
That's clicking.
Alright.
Oh yeah, of course.
So who said programming was boring? Yes, it's a really quick.
No,
really
oh,
quick- I didn't really
okay,
show that.
okay.
Oh, you nearly went for it.
Yeah. I will keep going for it as well.
Whee.
What was that? And you get to keep holding fast.
You're not making sure.
Anyway, it is now time for a break. I shall stop the video live streaming.
Are we going to add to it?
I'm going to save this to my internal memory drive.
Chris?
Yeah.
Are we adding to it or?
We are, yeah. But next stage is face the boring bit where we've got to design it. So we actually got to go back to the design.
I missed that.
It's there. Next shot.
Okay. Oh, but
You may realise you can't actually close the program down as well, which I guess it also forward to close the program down. Just so you know it as well. I don't know if I can see it up yet.
How do you save all that?
Sorry?
I've just saved all.
You don't save it. As soon as you run it, it's saved automatically.
No, I want to put it on my somewhere.
Right, okay, what you need to do then is on Solution Explorer, right click, open the folder in File Explorer, and then you take that folder
Oh,
into
sure. College. HNC Ninja.net.
oh, now that's all that. I was missing everything.
There we go. And then well,
You still can with this actually.
You're gonna say fair enough. Touche. Touche. Okay.
I don't get paid for breaks, you see. I
Fair
down,
enough.
I down tools.
Fair enough. We take those.
Comes at my office sometimes.
Right. Hi, Mr. Master Wilson. You have an iBook test. Yeah, my little boy's ill today with like a bad cold. Yeah.
My mother's first question will be, is he dying? If not, she
Yeah, no, he's not dying, luckily. They're a bit worried. He's going to get out of this flu.
That's Australian thing.
Yeah, oh, dying.
It's just like, it's just like, are you dying? Go to school, you wimpass.
Yeah.
The only problem is you then spread it round. That's the problem.
It is.
That was my
I used to hate it. People
that
coming
was my
into work.
mum's attitude as she worked for the NHS.
Yeah, I used to hate people coming in and sitting there, not achieving anything anyway, and just, coughing and spluttering.
It's like going around the supermarket.
Don't want
Everyone's.
Oh, I know. Yeah, then nice hands all over the fresh veg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, our next door neighbour is his granddad. We live next door to
Yeah.
Pat's dad. And he's got asthma flu at the moment. And he went round there on Sunday to give some papers, right? And he didn't spend too long there, but we were a bit worried. It's like, oh no, please don't, because if we go down that, we really are going to go down this
Entire family. So I like all this stuff about, keep yourself away from people. When you've got kids, I'll just put my kid in his room and shut the door.
Exactly,
I won't go near him.
That's
Yeah,
it,
just impossible.
A giant hamster ball, that's what we need,
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. It's a Zorbing ball.
Yeah, live inside that for a week. Just take your duvet in there.
Yeah,
Use a laptop. Yeah, no. No, but I might come for a walk actually. Just to...
Abandon you, Jay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very breathless. And so, I don't know if that's just the
That
chest.
can be the heart.
Yes, I don't think it's the heart. He's chest anyway. So
Yeah,
he's not built like that. He seems to be good at dodgy levels.
Yeah.
So he does get breathless very easily. And he gets, it's like pulls out cold enough, in fact, in the past, he turned to asthmatic cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he eczema is coming in his chest anyway. So you don't know. Lungs,
Yeah,
is
that's
it this heart thing? So I need to keep an eye.
yeah. So when's the Jews go back?
It's going to be like 8 years, 6 months or so.
Yeah.
6 months to a year. So I can't. They do take it quite seriously. All these sports people just clean.
Yeah. Yes, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Doctors not like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we do everyone is swimming.
Yeah, that doesn't sound
That
like
sounds really good.
I'm not asthmatic, and I'm okay now. I use a lot of nurses and various different bits. And you do build up your sort of lungs as you do exercise and things anyway. So that does sound like
Long term, and I hope it's like, yeah, it's like the neck, really, because I am sick.
yeah.
So, yeah, I've always been convinced I've never taken it. I've always been convinced I swear, it feels like it's congested. I want to fly. It's a bit of pressure. It's got. Which then, oddly enough, then makes me hurt my chest. I think I find it.
Right, yeah.
One of the amazing feels I found, which I've never explained in 50 years, whenever I flew it, because I'm nervous about my chest. Take pulls extra strong.
Oh, yeah.
Never had any chest pain that flight. And I reckon it's all because I felt like I could breathe.
Yeah.
So, he doesn't, I think he's got the same thing. Some silly little things like going on as well. Just little quirks. It's just not helping with that. Maybe it's not helping much.
Yeah.
He's doing this.
See, I'm completely opposite. I don't breathe through my nose.
No,
I always breathe through my mouth. And it drives me fun. Why don't you just breathe through your nose? You know, I can't. Yeah,
I spend a lot of time not doing it because of this tightness.
Yeah.
Slight stuffy breathing.
Yeah. You can feel the weight of the air, the tracking bits. Yeah.
Yeah, these kids do worry, yeah.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, he's apparently still quite weak. It's again, because sometimes, there's the whole, I was at school, therefore suddenly I'm all okay. But he's not always.
That's when you know that they're really young.
Exactly.
You go, right, stay in your bed.
Yeah,
he's like,
okay. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Do we need to call the ambulance,
I don't know what, I haven't really, I know about this Australian thing, I thought about it for years, but I haven't really.
It's just.
How do you know the difference? When you've got that serious one, or just
There's basically 3 strains of influenza that exist in Europe, 3 different strains of APSA. And obviously each of the viruses are slightly different. Virus A is the worst type, virus B is the minor one, virus C you could be a carrier and never know you've got it. And an A strain hit Australia with a down temperature on Sunday. And it seems to be the same strains over here. When they do the flu jabs, they have to work about 8 months ahead because it's developing it. So they weren't expecting this, it wasn't in the flu jab either. which is fine. Yeah, so fine, yeah. Apparently there's, well, again, there's so many different stories about this as well, but there's 2 different flu jabs out there that were available in this twin cells, a triple and a quad. And apparently if you have the quad, you probably won't get the A strain because there's a similar enough strain in that quad one that means it was a problem. Now, I had to pay for it. Yeah, as you know, exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you paid for it, generally, it's assumed that you have the quad. That's the good thing. If you kept the instruction book, it would turn however, if you had it under the NHS, because it's cheaper, the triple. Now, as it happened, oh no, yeah, exactly, always the way. As it happened, I was rejected from the surgery because they knew they were just aspirates. That's right, yeah. So, you listen to jobs?
No, I'm with Melbourne Press.
Right. Yeah. Well, I booked it in and I turned up and they said, well, let's do a quick minute now. You don't borrow. I was like, oh, right, okay. My partner did because she's a full-time carer, etc. And Luke did as well because he gets it through the school name as nasal spray. But he didn't like the nasal spray. He doesn't get on with it, so we booked him to have the injection instead. The surgeon was happy with that, and they had to buy the injection separately for him because it was a day that all the other kids were getting nasal spray, so they had to, and it was the quad. So he's been protected against that. I think I have. I think the daughter.
I'm the one who
Oh, really?
I got sick of having
Yeah.
I got the receptionist, but I'm trying to get to talk to them.
Yeah.
I said, well, why do you think you need it? Okay, you don't let it fit, you don't knock what it fits.
Because I'm going to struggle with food. Yeah.
And I say, well, I've had it every year for the last 5 years. Why do you think that?
No.
Yeah,
Receptionist.
Well, the nurse one, the nurse, like, okay, I'll have that conversation.
Was it the nurse?
So I always have that.
Yeah.
When you get there, the last time, last couple of times, I shouldn't be giving this, but it's the one thing I wouldn't have got twice, I remember it twice, and that's what I shouldn't be giving it to you. The thing is, it's the doctor who tells me they don't have it.
Yeah, I know.
And
That's
the
exactly the same thing.
nurse, and the nurse rejects it.
Yeah.
So I said, look, you go and speak to the doctor, he's going to tell me to do it. I just got bored, I thought, £7.
I know exactly.
I'll just
It's
go,
not worth
you know,
the
I
hassle,
can't be
is it?
bothered with the hassle. I go wherever I'm going, I went in at lunchtime.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
booked it in one day, went in at lunchtime.
Yeah.
5-10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And for £7. I mean, you shouldn't have to. A lot of people push it.
But I agree with you. I think, and the thing is, there's a big thing at my surgery, St John's. Everyone please have the flu jab because basically they get paid for it.
Yeah.
And so last year, everyone, I mean, the surgeons were full, a huge queue, thousands of people, having the flu. No, great, yeah, coming on. Do you want 2? Yeah, why don't you try?
It's just a lot of people
Yeah.
get paid.
But then this year, I think they got told off last year on how they did because they were really strict this year, which is why I had to go.
I got one nurse one year who was brilliant. Yeah, I started listening that long. She did say, why do you think you need 30 odd a year? I said, well, listen. And she said, oh, no problem, she's got the pneumonia jab as well. And she just offered that, and that's a lifetime jab.
Oh, wow.
So next year, I had my argument,
Yeah.
went in at the argument, she was giving me the food. I said, do I need to top up on the pneumonia as well?
Yeah.
And I said, well, you've got pneumonia. I said, yeah, that's a lifetime. It won't last a lifetime.
No.
Because the strains change, things change, theories, and 40 years or something. So that's quite nice.
Yeah.
Chris.
But yeah, so that nurse didn't question it, gave me a pneumonia jab, gave me an extra,
Yeah.
quite a big extra.
Yeah. It really is like you do. Yeah.
Very quick one. Do you know who's looking at information about pricing for your case study thing you were going to get? Did you get the university stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. If not, I was going to say the person to talk to is sitting there.
Yeah, that's the question.
Because I thought he's got all his mates are in Lincoln, and one's in Leicester from last year.
I'm going to have to do the proposals for
And they will know how many contact hours they have, and also how many lab hours they have.
Yeah, I used lots of trades today.
Yeah.
There was 12 tutor hours with 6 postgrad hours in the first year. That means total, I mean, if you include, if you just have tutor hours, it's 20.
Yeah, that's the easy answer,
It's
right?
quite in total, so I'm going to
Yeah.
Obviously, just £2 more than you get in university.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of change. Look, we've done while charging since we started the course. We've done
Oh yeah, because it'll have my addendums.
So that's the better. We know we don't get the sequence of life we have with that.
Yeah, showing the things.
Does that include the labs? That's the postgrad labs, the labs, because that's how we use the current.
Yeah, drivers. Then I had these guys and yeah, storage.
It's also 27 weeks a year.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't going to do it because I didn't know to
I'll have a read of it. Sounds too.
yeah. Once you might want to do I don't know what because one was the we did towards the lake. There's like an approximate timestamp.
Weird kind of.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought that I was
Yeah. But you never can competitive again, you know.
Not the actual backpack, because that's a bit, you know, like the central list.
But yeah, it's only occurred to me, he's got all his friends that have got doing all the lights, Western Police. Yeah. But you just get into the tracks and that matter. Because at least that might be one of the universities, so that was my, sounds like that's it.
Yeah, it's, I think that's typical. I mean, to be fair, that's also.
Expect that.
I wasn't sure if I knew this water and that's the power supply.
Yeah.
It's
Process.
Yeah.
I think it does.
See, it's ladder. Yeah, it's the about 28.
No,
The lecture ways there for the.
It's not really like.
It's ready for themselves up.
it's reasonably similar. In the final,
Oh, that happened. No, that happened.
in the final, you're just switching something out.
You are with all these things. You can't say swap.
Email, they make.
Take the multi-page chip off the motherboard. It's the same as
So it's
something
my trace of cleaner. Make that accessory.
What
And was that down in
what
you're saying,
the
what
experimental
he
stuff
means
running,
is that
and it dried out
like
over there. As soon as it got dried out, it exploded.
You flip it up and
There's glassware.
take it out. That thing.
I've done a redux track for my eardrum, but that's.
Yeah.
Then you're wrong. You haven't actually said how to swap. You said how
Worked
to
out how to make chlorine. I'm convinced that's what did it. I got the people who know for making chlorine or something.
Yeah. Right, guys, let's carry on then with the next part, which is the less exciting and interesting bit, I'm afraid.
I'm going to use my hard drive.
This is where the design bits come in. Now, how do we design the software? Well, we designed it bit by bit, and we went through it section by section. By doing it section by section, we were able to build up our knowledge. Now, this is why I love doing things like YouTube tutorials on things like this, because if I was just to write out the code and send it to someone, they would start exactly the finished product, because that's the first thing they just type in each bits of code and they don't see the work that goes into thinking about, let's build this bit in, let's then build on top of that layer and build on that layer. Programming is all about building up the layers. Always has been, always will be. However, we can take what we've done now and we can produce what we would consider a proper design document for this. I'm going to show you various different techniques we can do this. The first one is the most straightforward. And we're going to use a really complicated program, again, PowerPoint. And all you do is a description. Oh, and you spell description correctly. From the user perspective.
quite often this is used as a start point for almost like we said about top down, bottom up databases. It's similar to that for programming, and it will not give the level of detail necessarily to actually let someone just say, right, this is what I want to build, but it will tell the person who's building it exactly what should happen at the other end. Someone who's non-technical will quite often come up with a design like this. This is a Steve Jobs special, because when Steve Jobs used to think about something and want something, he would say, no, I want it to do this. And he doesn't care how he gets to do that, he just wants it to do that. So what you would say is, along the lines of like a story, the program opens full screen with a score of 0 in the top left corner. Oh. After a random period of time, a square appears on the screen. If the square is black, you have to click it before it disappears. If the square is red, you have to leave it and wait for a black square to appear. The game is over if you click anywhere but the squares, or click on a red square, or miss the black square. Basically, a very, very simple statement of what that description looks like. If any of you want to see what that sort of statement looks like for Space Invaders, on the shared folder under Computing, we do actually have a Space Invaders design document. You should have, yes. Space Invaders design doc, and it looks like this. This is a slightly more technical version. I don't know if I can get the whole thing in page. It's that there. But that talks about that same sort of idea, but in a slightly, it's not a completely technical version, but it explains how Space Invaders works. Okay? So it says along the lines of the player object is always at fixed. My mouse. The player object is always at a fixed Y location on the screen, so we only need a single variable representing the X locations drawing play. As there was only one image to the player, this is just drawing a bitmap. It's going to a bit more technical detail, but not overly. Okay. However, that really is quite often the start point, as I say, to actually coming up with a design, coming up with a thought process, the mechanics, how you can visualize it working in your head. The next thing, after your specification, is looking at flowcharts. Now, have I done flowcharts with you guys at all yet? No? I mean, some of you would have done this in the previous years, but I'm going to take it as if you've never done flowcharts before anyway. You've done flowcharts? Hope so. And we'll have to resync the board again.
Yeah. You've made this video already.
Yes, I made you
Di-
forced it evil lecture.
Diagrams and mind maps. No, hey, look, just do a list.
Okay, let's start with what the different symbols mean. There are special symbols in flowcharts. Okay. First one is the elongated sausage. Anyone know what this object is called?
The start or end of the process.
It is the start and end of the process. It's known as a terminator.
I'm surprised no one did the impression.
I know, I was thinking of it, but I changed my mind because I was trying to embarrass myself. It cannot go through time.
No,
does
I
not
can't
generate
go
jump on it,
butcher it.
and generally, it uses either from the start and finish. There are ways that you can actually write extra information in this rather than just start and finish. Sometimes there'll be the name of the function, and you might even include the input variables there as well. There are other ways people will do this, and I'm going to show those as we go along as well. Is it going to work? I have a mouse cursor again. So a terminator is the first object that starts and stops your entire flowchart. Okay. The next, the workhorse of the flowchart, is a square box. It's known as a process. It is just one instruction. So we don't do like a whole list of things that it's going to do. Each one is in a separate box. Very simple, straightforward, hopefully. All, as I say, most of you use these sorts of things before, and those that haven't can tell because they're the ones that are going, oh God, please don't tell me you have to do flowcharts like that. There is a special type of process box which has two lines. Exciting. There's a sub-process. Now, sub-process sounds like it should be a process within a process. Actually, what it means is it's a whole load of code on another flowchart generally that does one job, does a single job that you use in other places. Where do we see this sub-process, do you think, when we get the quick turn our game that we've just been doing? What would we consider a sub-process?
The timer checks.
No, that'd be a separate flowchart.
If you use different class,
We've used it was where we call a certain method. Which method do we call all over the place?
Oh, game over.
Game over. When we call the game over method, we'll write the words game over in that and refer it to the game over flowchart, which is the code plus game over. Yeah? Does that make sense? Or ish? We'll get when we go through the process, we'll make more sense. You gonna say something?
Yes.
What?
I don't fully get it.
You don't fully get it? No? Okay. Say I've got a flowchart called game over, which runs through the code of what we have to do with the game over reset code. Yeah? I've done that as a separate command. In timer one, I then obviously use game over somewhere. So instead of just writing game over in a square process like that, I write it in that to say this is another piece of code somewhere that does a whole series of tasks. And so when we go through the words example, we'll see if that makes it any clearer.
Is that-
If it doesn't, let me know.
can that be with like different classes or that's
Yeah,
different?
you get your classes, it can be all sorts of different things. It's anything that is going to refer to some other data that's in
Some other side of the code.
Sorry? Some other part of code, yeah, pretty much. The next item is this shape, which is a nightmare because when you write in it, you obviously have to write in a square that's inside like that, so you have to make the shape huge just to fit all your words in. But any idea what this might be?
Precision box.
It is a decision box.
If out statements.
Now there is a slight problem with programming. How many different decisions do you think you can make at any decision point?
Loads.
Only ever two. You can't do have 3 different routes on the programming flowchart, so do this, this, or this. Each one would have a separate decision.
Oh yeah.
All you can have is yes or no. Okay?
Or
The
maybe.
reason it's a diamond is so that you can have 2 different pathways. Does it always have to be yes to the right and no to the bottom? No, you can do it whichever way round you like. There's no rhyme or reason other than making the flowchart as easy to understand as possible. You can have it either way round. Okay? And we're going to go through how these decisions and things, we're going to see all this in action. Okay? They're the main shapes. If you can get those ones, they're the main shapes that you need to worry about. A couple of others though that might be useful. What's that called as a shape?
Parallelogram.
Parallelogram. Very good. Parallelogram, 2 sets of parallel lines. What do you use that for? Any ideas what you might use that for?
I'll probably say continuous processes to just run in the background and do stuff.
Any element of data. So creating a variable, you can. Some people just create the processes, but efficiently it's most creating the data. So you can very quickly see where you create your variables and things like that. Okay. This you should be able to know. What's that?
Database.
It's a database. It's the universal symbol of database.
Do you actually get that symbol in the vision?
Sorry?
Do you actually get that symbol?
Yeah. It is the universal symbol of database, and it's referred to as such. So obviously the flowcharting system I use is Visio, as you guys will know. Visio is great fun for everyone who uses it. I.e., it's great fun for me, but nobody else. Yeah, a lot of people like to kill it with fire. You're not the only one, don't worry, Jay. So what we've got here is you have a look. You've got all these sorts of different flowcharts and things that you can create. We're going to go with the basic flowchart, which is really exciting. We'll go for a nice. I'm going to go for a nice orange one.
known as an on-reference flowchart, and then I'm going to delete everything that's on the theme because we don't like that. So as you can see, you've got a list of all the different things here. Oh, there was something else that I forgot to mention. I'll go through that in a second. Let's put that on while we're here, shall we? Because it's kind of an important one.
Loops. I forgot to talk about loops. You have a start of a loop and an end of a loop. Now, this is really contentious as well because times have changed since I used to write flowcharts for real software. And technically speaking now, you don't use flowcharts with loops. You don't include loops, you have these decision boxes that go back to themselves if you are in the industry now. However, there's no real industry standards flowcharts anyway, which is quite useful because I still would rather use these because it makes it obvious that there's a loop there rather than a decision box which looks like a loop. But it does make it problematic when using it in Visio because they include this shape, but they no longer include the top shape.
Why?
Because
Why would they do that?
That's
stupid.
So how do you get the top shape from the bottom shape? Well, you actually rotate it, spin it round. And then it's the text upside down. So after typing in the text, you have to spin the text.
Oh, that's so dumb. That's so dumb and really infuriating.
Key so that's a loop. So let's create a flowchart, a very, very simple and quick flowchart, based on the code that we've done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the code alongside so we can actually see how it gets changed from code into the object that we're going to create. Yes, please, yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a start-end terminator, and I'm going to call this initializer. I'm then going to put one on the end, which is going to be my finish. So what's my initializer do? Well, my initializer is this bit of code here, and I'm going to ignore the built-in code that says initialize component, and that just sets up the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run my two processes, which is hide the red square, hide the black square, set the interval on the timer to a random number between 500 and 2000, then start the timer. And then I'm going to shrink these boxes down in size, and then use something called connector at the top to just join them together with nice pretty lines.
Chris,
Yes.
do we not include like integers in this as well?
Which bit? The integers and things?
For example, like score?
I haven't got that in my. You mean the globals?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to do that separately. We're not, that doesn't go in here. Don't worry. We will put that in a minute. Now, this type of flowchart that you see here, which is all nice in one line, actually has a special name because it is an example of one of the types of program flow that we can do. What's it called?
What was the question again?
What is this special type of flowchart which just literally goes from one thing to another before it hits the finish called? There's three different types of flow, or three different types of program flow.
Is the one that follows step by step?
Yep, that's one that follows step by step. Known as a sequence. It's called a sequence flowchart. So it literally goes from one item after another. Sequence. You may also notice there's no technical terminology in my flowchart. It's all written in English rather than in code.
You could just write each line of code in there. That would be sensible, suitable. But then someone who's non-technical wouldn't necessarily be able to read it.
For those people who finished that, I'm going to put the global variables in then. Even though the global variables don't really need to go in a flowchart, they're useful to them. We're going to use the data. Now what I'd like you to do, I'm just going to create the start end points to see if you guys can do these. I'm going to create a start end point for game over, timer tick, click black square, click red square, click the background. Okay, so they're all the different bits of code that we're going to need to use. Let me just get a sub-process out because I'm going to hide my shapes now, so I've got a bit more room while I'm doing my code, so you guys can see on your screens.
How do you get the arrows?
Can you see what it says connector on the tools at the top? You just click that, and then you can join them on.
Yeah, you've got an arrow.
Yeah, no.
Which
Oh,
one?
right. Right.
Yeah, because okay, you need to change it to an arrow shape. You actually need to change the line, and then it's the end arrow type. You need to change the arrow type to like forward. No.
I use a straight connector tool.
Yes, yeah. It's very. This is very. Do you use this for?
Loads.
Yeah.
That's all we ever use.
Yeah.
Every time we do anything from an office layout to a full network, I mean full network.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the best program. It really is. Yeah. No.
Oh, the window.
Because you can import, you know, people like Cisco and that.
Yeah.
Release the Visio pack.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You get all the graphics exactly as you want to.
And there's a rack as well.
Really?
You can do it on this anyway, there's actually
A set of.
template.
Yeah. It's not click background, is it? Click red.
Do that side by side.
So this is what I mean about the whole doing the game over. Literally, click the background, game over. Click the red square, game over. The timer script is going to be the difficult bit. So I'm going to, well, not difficult bit, but it's going to be the longest one.
Which one?
The timer tick is going to be the longest one. Let me just do the black square. So increase the score by 1. Hide the black square and show score on screen. see if I can do the game over. Easily. Where's the game over?
I wish it would set hopefully
You can do all your labels afterwards. If you'll be able to select all the different lines in one go and change the line style to the arrow.
Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can.
So I will go back up again in a second. I forget that you're still copying. Tell you what, if I move it like that, that'll give me more room. So
The one global was
I'll just put the game over at the side here so you guys can see it. Set the score to 0. Hide the red square, hide the black square. Start timer. Now, again, you don't have to copy me, but this is just the way when I'm writing programs I do things, especially when I'm using flowcharts, because I'm strange like this. But I will show you what I do. I'll just move these so I know it's all changing.
Chris,
Yeah.
when I start the time, wouldn't that be a sub process?
No, it's actually just, technically speaking, yes it is, but it's just one command in C#. It's not something I've got to write more code for. For starting the timer, it's just enabled equals true. I don't have to write a whole series of code to make the timer run. So that's really how you sort of determine whether it's a sub-process or not. If there's another flowchart on your diagram that it refers to. So when I'm referring to game over, you can see what I'm doing. I'm actually just putting an arrow from the sub-process onto that flowchart to say that's the flowchart that I'm using there. But if I don't need to do that like the start timer because there is no flowchart to go to, then I don't need to do it as a sub-process. You know, starting the timer, I haven't had to write some code that starts the timer, so it doesn't. I don't have to write a flowchart that shows what.
The process for the time.
Oh, that's separate. That's the timer tick. Yeah, so starting the timer is separate to the timer tick. Yeah, I see what you're saying. No, you don't need to worry about it as a separate process. Right, so the last one I'm going to do now is the timer tick. This is going to be the tricky. I might have to just reorganise my work just to.
Oh, okay, then. Oh, okay, then I can relabel it. Oh, going to be too small, but you might will be. Just look at that.
If you double click on a line, you can type on the line to make like words yes and no appear when you're doing the choice box. Um, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to pause my screen for a second so you guys, because I'm going to need to go off this to make it smaller for the timer tick.
Oh no!
I'm pausing it completely so you guys can carry on.
I'm going to set me out. On the page out. No. Go. Sorry.
Let's only go back and show.
I can't believe it, the thing.
Okay, if I now show this form right, that is pretty much every point on the board, or every point in our code. What I'm just going to do is I'm going to make it a bit clearer as the start points for every program. I'm just going to highlight in a slightly different color orange so that you can see where the ends and the finishes and the starts are a bit clearer. Hopefully that should all be quite clear what each of those different bits do. While you're just finishing that off, I'm just going to go and get some printout.
it would help if I actually print the document first, wouldn't it?
Let me try that again so I know it's going off because I'm stupid. Printer properties,
Oh, wow.
colour, 6. There we go. Print. Okay.
And these having to right click to the text and stuff. Oh, this one. Okay. I just make edit square with right click. Game over. Yeah, oh yeah, it was. Well, we'll figure it out. Yeah, it's a layman's word.
Here's make it easy to say.
I'm thinking detail. As with the subform line, I like the detail, like the stuff. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, but,
I know you're still copying your item down, but I want to just go through something very, very quickly on here. You may or may not have noticed. One of the reasons why you do design before you do your code quite often is that when you're doing this design process, you can spot things where you're doing the same thing in different places. It might be actually worth taking out and putting into a separate piece of code. Now on this, it's really quite small, but there is one thing that we actually do over or more than once. If you look on the timer tick, we have a set interval, there's a set interval there. Just one box. Does that need to go in a separate command? Pretty much no. We've got hide the red square, hide the black square, and start the timer. We'll actually do that in initialize as well. Hide the red square, hide the black square, start the timer. If it was a bit of a longer sequence, we might actually put that into a separate flowchart, a separate system, a separate method, and have both the initializer and game over call that method so that the same code's in one place as a sort of reset code. And that reset code then might be added to in the future. It's about making things easier for a person to understand and maintain in the future as much as it is writing and programming things. Okay. Well, let's look live broadcast there as well, before we move on to the next bit. We're going to run out of battery on the phone. Even though it's plugged in, it's still using more battery than it's actually able to keep charging. I'm just going to take these posters down.